conversation go with my friend. We're in this together through.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Keep the Conversation Going. In this conversation, I'll be chatting with Meaghan and Katie Kehoegreen. The Kehoegreen sisters have lived their whole lives in Colchester, Connecticut, and have dedicated much of it to educating the youth of our communities. Join us for our conversation, where we'll be highlighting the many challenges that have been facing our teachers and our students as they've moved much of their learning to a virtual space. We'll also highlight the role that communication continues to play in providing feedback to students and families during these difficult times. So, as always, let's get this conversation started. So this is really exciting. This is a first for Keep the Conversation Going. Today we have not one but two guests. I have Meaghan and Katie Kehoegreen joining us for a conversation, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Meaghan, if you'd like to go first.
Sure. Hi, I'm Meaghan. I teach at Bacon Academy here in Colchester. I teach mostly seniors this year. I have one class of sophomores. I have 126 students this year, which has been interesting. This is my 14th year teaching at Bacon. I grew up here in town. I'm a Colchester person, so I absolutely love my job, and it's been an interesting year.
That's such a great story, and we're going to get to that interesting year in a second. Katie, you want to tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, I'm Katie. I'm a kindergarten teacher at Colchester Elementary School. I've been teaching there for 6 years. And obviously, I'm also a lifelong resident of Colchester as well.
That's fantastic. So this is, as I said, this is pretty cool. This is a first for Keep the Conversation Going with two guests, but also to have sisters on the show today is really great. So Meaghan, as you mentioned, obviously this year has changed quite dramatically, especially for those of us that are in the education industry. Certainly when we started our years, we never anticipated that we would be finishing them in this online format. And before we talk a little bit about what's changed, I have to ask you both. I know as educators, as teachers, we're incredibly passionate about what we do. So Meaghan, starting with you, what is it that you miss the most from your routine? What is it that you miss the most from being at Bacon? And how has that kind of impacted you?
There's so many things I miss, but like the reason I love teaching is because I can connect with students. It's just naturally part of who I am to be able to connect with people, understand who they are as like a full human being, understand who they are as a person, and that helps me help them as a learner. Knowing who they are, connecting with them, and hearing about how their days are going and their struggles and their adventures, and then being able to build those relationships and connections, and then use that to help the students feel invested in learning. So that it's so difficult doing that on the computer. You really don't have those daily interactions with students anymore, seeing them in the hallway and saying hi. And I'm also just missing the daily aha moments. There's I mean, that's what teaching math is all about, when the students are struggling with something and then they burst through and they get it and they, look up at you and they're like, Miss K, I got it. I figured it out. I understand it. And you don't see, I mean, every once in a while you get an email saying, I'm so proud of myself, but it's just not the same. It's definitely not the same.
It's really difficult. You talk about getting to know them as human beings. High school is obviously just such a large transition point for all of us. And we can remember being in high school and thinking about how we changed so much in such a
Mm.
short amount of time. Yet, Katie, you're on the other end of the spectrum. You have little people, kindergartners. And as the saying goes, everything we ever needed to know, we learned in kindergarten. What's it been like for you trying to keep your kindergartners' attention and to keep them motivated? And what do you miss about this whole experience?
I miss those small moments with the kids of, them coming in and telling me a story, or them sharing something new that's happening in their life, or something funny that happens in the classroom, and those things that kind of bond the class together. Kindergartners are very social, and they love to talk to each other and spend time with each other. And I think it's hard, that social piece is really missing with the distance learning, where we're not kind of feeding off of each other and building on each other. And that's what I think I miss the most, those little moments throughout the day that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I know that you haven't given up hope. I have a first grader who you had as a
Yeah.
student in my own home, and I see her working every morning on the lessons plan that have been put together in a short amount of time. Katie, starting with you, what have you done in short order to try to bring your learning into this new online and virtual environment? And what are some of the challenges that you faced, and what are some of the new things that maybe you've learned along the way?
Honestly, I just feel like when this started, we've been even more collaborative than we are in a normal environment, because we normally were in our classrooms and we're teaching, and we all know what we're teaching. We're all teaching similar things, but the level of collaboration has increased and really gone through the roof. So some of the things that I've done are just creating videos of myself that I send out to the students. I've been doing Google Meet so far. I've been doing them one-on-one, and right now working towards setting up a whole class Google Meet. And I think that's my favorite thing, because that kind of captures those little small moments a little bit more, where the kiddos, they're kind of bringing me into their lives as they are right now, and I get to better understand where they are right now and what their life looks like, and that helps me build empathy and helps me understand them on a personal level, because I always feel like you almost need to get to know the children again on a whole new level. You get to know them in September and October and throughout the year, but you have to get to know them again. And so I love the Google Meets, because their faces light up and they're so excited, and they're showing you all their toys and their siblings and their pets. And it's just really fun getting to know them on like a whole new level.
Meaghan, on the other end of the spectrum, you're teaching math to high school students. I can think back to my own high school math classes. They were hard, they were challenging. I really respect the work that our high school teachers do, because when there's so much going on in our life, yet there's so much learning, and you've had your lesson plan completely changed. So what's it been like for you trying to teach particularly math? And I feel also, many of the other subjects like science can be really challenging. So what have you done to change and modify your lesson plan to make it effective for your students in this virtual environment?
It is totally different than it would normally be. It was definitely a learning curve of realizing that like I'm a first year teacher again. It's like I'm starting from scratch. All the things that I've been doing in my classroom, I really can't do anymore. I can't just set up an iPad and just videotape me doing every single lesson the way I used to. That's just not going to work. So one of the things that I've been working on is having students focus on problem solving lately. So there's lots of great activities online. There's a couple of websites that have these incredible problem solving activities that really dig deeper and make real world connections with the math. Everything has to be kept to little short increments, though. It can't be 20 minutes of somebody talking. It needs to be more interactive, where they watch a little video, then they do some practice, or they do an activity. Motivation is definitely hard, because I teach seniors and lots of them are doing well already. So it's difficult to maintain that motivation for them, and for them to keep a sense of value, and that this is important in their life right now, when everything else seems to be going so far astray from what it normally is.
So let's talk about this for a moment. We have all had our lives impacted, and I think about students in a way. Meaghan, you're teaching seniors. So many of their lasts will be different from what they anticipated. Katie, you're teaching kindergartners. So many of their firsts will be different. You're on either end of the spectrum, and my heart goes out for both groups, because the parents involved, the loved ones, the families, we really love to celebrate in our community those firsts and those lasts. Meaghan, starting with you for your seniors, what is it that you would like to send them as a message for those of them that are missing out on their last? How do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them engaged? And how do you help them keep perspective for the moments that they were looking forward to that are unlikely to come as a result of the pandemic?
Yeah, it's hard. I just remember how important in my family graduations were, and they're not having that traditional graduation. So that's difficult, but at least they'll get something in the summer. We do hope to have some type of ceremony in the summer for them. What I try to remind my students of is that so many generations have been through difficult things like this. Like if you think about World War I and World War II and Vietnam, the history of the world shows that we go through periods where life changes a real lot, and that people have burdens that they need to bear, and that it's different than the traditions of the past. There's big change that we need to deal with. So I think our students they see that, they realize that, they're seeing the big picture. They're sad that they're missing their proms and that their graduation and their class trip, but they also have hope to be able to create those own memories. I'm sure that they're going to, create Instagram posts of themselves in their prom gowns and sort of do like photo shoots at home and try to make the best of the situation, do whatever they can to maintain sense of community and celebration throughout this.
And on the other side of this, Katie, how do you work with the parents, or what messages do you have for those families right now who have kindergartners or young people, and what do you tell them, and how do we overcome this for our young people to make sure that they can stay on track in their learning and in their development?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about kindergarten and just the younger grade levels is that they can't do this work independently. So a lot of the students need that parent sitting with them and doing the work. And so on that end, I know I just have such empathy. I know that with the parents, it can feel like a lot for them, especially if they have multiple siblings, if they're still working. I have a lot of families that just, they're balancing a lot. And so the thing I think I just keep telling the families is you are doing amazing. You're trying your best. Your child is going to be okay. And just don't stress about it I don't want them to be so stressed out about this, and I don't want their children to be stressed out about it. Like, it's okay to take a step back, do what you can do in the moment. Things are continually changing and adjusting, and so what you might be able to do today might be different tomorrow, might be different the next day. And I think from the teacher perspective, having an understanding of that and just being aware and cognizant of not putting extra pressure on them in this type of situation, and just being just giving them that breathing room and say, it's okay, we're going to get through this, and your child is totally going to be okay.
I mean, this has just been a really fascinating conversation to especially get the divergent perspectives of our young and our old and the teachers who are working really hard to try to make this come together. I can't help but think, Meaghan and Katie, that communication plays a critical role now more than ever. We know the role of communication in development, especially when it comes to relationships. So, Meaghan, I'm going to start with you. What does communication mean to you in all of this, and how has your perspective of communication developed over the last several weeks?
So communication in teaching is interesting because there's almost two sides of it. There's the connecting piece, and then there's the sharing information piece. Communication through grades, communication through, just letting your students know, giving feedback on what they're understanding and what they're not understanding, and sharing that with parents is one piece of it. And that piece is really up in the air right now. Grades don't matter as much as feedback does. So we've been focusing on feedback and trying to communicate with students what they're learning. You're doing a good job with this, keep on working on this, rewatch this. So the feedback part of it has definitely changed greatly. In the classroom, we're able to give feedback instantaneously, and give feedback to an entire group of students. I can give feedback to 30 students in a very short amount of time, where now giving feedback to all of my students is much more time consuming and difficult and feels less authentic. So I think one of the big parts of communicating as a teacher is giving students and parents feedback, and that piece of it has changed drastically. It's definitely more challenging right now, and that's been one of my struggles, is maintaining the ability to give genuine and authentic feedback to the students so that they can use it to keep on learning.
Katie, what about you? When you think about the role that communication has played for you with your students and their families, what have you learned about communication, or what are you taking away from this?
I feel like being more flexible with communication in this kind of format, because normally the majority of the communication we do is face-to-face. So whether that's with our colleagues or whether that's with the students, and now the communication, Meaghan kind of references, it's a bit delayed. So even if, I feel like ideally a Google Meet is, that's more instantaneous, but there's a delay when you're sending an email or submitting something on Google Classroom. So it's sort of being flexible with that, and being flexible with miscommunications. And if you say something and someone else interprets it another way, taking the time to either re-explain what your intention was initially, or kind of thinking about it and being like, okay, is their misinterpretation a big deal, or can I be flexible and bend with this and say, okay, we can do it this way? And you feel like you have to be a little bit more flexible with this, because it's not instantaneous and it's harder I feel like when we communicate in person in the school setting, we communicate a lot, and a big part of that too is the body language and just reading each other's, the situation and the body language. And so now I think you just need to be more flexible with it and more patient with it as we figure it out and as we go forward.
Certainly, I think that as we all move and spend more time in these virtual spaces, our ability to adapt our traditional face-to-face approaches to communication will become more and more important. We know that our younger generations are going to spend more time in their lives in these virtual spaces. So hopefully we can continue to model the best practices of how to communicate in these spaces to give them, a real good opportunity to develop their communication skills in a wide range of modalities. This conversation has been really important, and I would just like to say on behalf of all of the students out there, all of the families with students out there, we're so grateful for the work that our teachers are doing here in our community, but also really around the world right now. Teachers are amazing. They play such an important part of our community, and it's been great to watch all of the teachers step up, do what they need to do to try to provide their students the best that they possibly can in these challenging times. And the two of you are no exception to that. We're so grateful to have you as part of our community and to be role models for our students. I hope you enjoyed the conversation today, and hopefully we will see you on the grounds of Colchester Elementary School or Bacon Academy in the near future.
Keep the conversation going, my friend. We're in this together through